Okay, we now reach the last scene of the play. And what I want to do, as ever, is if this passage comes up, you may find that it's your job to take the temperature of Hamlet. I know I've used that phrase a lot throughout these talks. There are two things I want you to notice about it. And so my little commentary on this is going to take two lines of attack. One is, again, like we discussed with How All Occasions Do Inform Against Me, is the idea that Hamlet is, to a greater or lesser degree at any given time, conscious of those around him, people who are less exalted socially than he is. And the other one is, I would suggest that based on this, he has a new relationship with fate, by which I mean that he's no longer thinking about whether or not his sheer thought processes will lead him to do the right thing. He actually articulates the idea that spontaneity is really important. Let's start with the first one, Hamlet and politics. There are some things that are worth noticing. This is, after all, the passage in which Hamlet admits to Horatio that the deaths of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, quotes, are not near my conscience. They are not near my conscience. And he calls them, he actually says this, "'Tis dangerous," Hamlet again making a very general point based on a specific instance, "'tis dangerous when the baser nature comes between the pass," that image taken from fencing, foreshadowing the battle that's going to come, "and fell insensate points," again a sword reference, "of mighty opposites." Hamlet here means, almost with a kind of begrudging respect, that he and the king are the mighty opposites, and that it's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern who have the baser natures. Therefore, they're the kind of small people who come between big ones, to put it crudely. However, Hamlet also has a kind of scorn for the way that those mighty opposites operate, if you'll pardon me saying. Again, to take the line of a critic such as Rhodri Lewis, you may remember, his argument is that Hamlet is as corrupt as the rest of the court. He's a failed philosopher, a failed poet, someone who actually fails to find his own identity in the face of the kind of machine that is the regime. Now, Hamlet might be fighting against that machine, but I want to make quite a big deal of this bit here. I once did hold it, as our statists do, a baseness to write fair, and laboured much how to forget that learning. But sir, now it did me yeoman's service. Given my argument, which is about normal people, to put it crudely, yeoman is a particularly scornful, dismissive word. It means a kind of, even back in Chaucer, it means a kind of steward of an estate, someone who does the kind of ordinary work, a drudge, if you'll use that, if you don't mind that expression. What he means here is that he once thought it a baseness. He once thought it beneath him to write in the kind of ornate, flowery language that diplomats use. Don't bother translating it if you're in an exam, but I'm just telling you. And laboured much how to forget that learning. I tried to establish my own sense of individuality in the face of that. But now, sir, it did me yeoman's service. It was really useful that I had that kind of education. So what he's saying there really is that, and I love this, is that Hamlet actually tells us in this line that he is a mimic, that he makes his way through the court, and dare I say it, his life, limited as it is at the moment, by ripping off the voices of other people and mocking them. Here, for example, is an example of Hamlet's mockery. You notice that, and you could call it anaphora if you want, you notice that the iambs of these lines, as England, as love, as peace, and then he has that line, and many such like as, sir, of great charge. I mean, if you count the number of times the word as appears in that speech, well, it's at least 4. That's the only ones I can see. I also wonder if there's a kind of pun there, that the Latin as being a very low currency in ancient Rome, and as is an as of great charge. He actually mimics the flourish of the words, even by using the word flourish. There's love between them, like the palm might flourish, and mocks the language that you might use from the Danish ambassador to the British one. That gives us a glimpse of Hamlet's attitude towards the lower orders. We are about to see him meet Osric, and you'll see him in action there. The second thing I want to talk about, point number 2, is his relationship with fate. And with that, I want to draw attention to some particular passages. This one, rashly, I'm just going to read it out, rashly, and praise be rashness for it, let us know our indiscretion sometime serves us well when our deep plots do fall. And that should learn us, and then these very important lines, there's a divinity that shapes our ends, rough hew them how we will. Hamlet is saying something here that is, I would suggest, completely at odds with the Hamlet of to be or not to be, or the Hamlet who, even before his last appearance, well, even in Act 4, Scene 4, was talking about whether or not he was a coward, or whether that was 3 parts of his psyche, or the 1 part wisdom, and all of that. This is really different. He's actually given up on that. He said, do you know what? I did something totally spontaneous, and it worked. I mean, you could argue about how spontaneous a man is when he manages to craft in just the right kind of calligraphy, the right kind of nuanced diplomatic nonsense that he's spent his lifetime mocking. But there it is. He is suddenly aware of a kind of fate, and that's going to become incredibly important as he heads into the battle. One last thought about the political aspect of this nature, about this. It is one of the very few occasions in the play when Hamlet acknowledges that just one of his griefs against the regime is that he has not been king. It might be worth mentioning that we've just discovered that he's 30. And however youthful he seems to be, and at the University of Wittenberg and distracted by his studies, nonetheless, he is a perfectly eligible candidate for the kingship. And as Fortinbras observes in Hamlet's dying breath, he would have proved most royal, as in like a king. But here we have another list, very similar to the one, again, that he did in Act 4, Scene 4, which says... he hath killed, in this case he says, he hath killed my king and whored my mother, popped in that dismissive language because he's belittling Claudius's achievements, between the election and my hopes. It's actually almost unique in hearing about his hopes. Thrown out his angle for my proper life, proper meaning my own, and with such cozenage, meaning deception. It's not perfect conscience. Finally, a little reflection about that word conscience. A.C. Bradley, in his essay on Hamlet as a tragedy, spends quite a while wondering if conscience is a significant factor in Hamlet's delay. Whether or not it was, and A.C. Bradley takes the view, well, if it is, it's not a very important one. And it's worth looking at that word conscience in 2 senses. One is conscience as in doing the right or wrong thing. They are not near my conscience, as we said at the beginning of this discussion. And the other one is in a sense of knowing about things, of having a kind of consciousness, of an awareness of how the universe works. And is not perfect conscience. I don't know. I think there's a kind of awakeness to the way of the world that's suggested by this word conscience in this particular context. So I put it to you that we're looking at a new Hamlet, a Hamlet who is aware not only of his position in the world as a dominant force and one who can make a difference as a prince, but also, to go back to the first prong of my argument, as someone who is aware that the universe will work out its purpose, whether or not he has anything to do with it.